Hello, everyone. My name is Grant Kastner. Welcome to Extemporary's 2023 PD Extravaganza on this Tuesday for part one of a workshop delivered by one Melissa Saraceno, Unscripted, Spontaneous Language in the World Language Classroom. We're so happy to have all of you here today. This session is being recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. The same goes with part two. Check it out there if you missed anything, or for the people who are viewing this as a recording right now. There's a feedback form at the end of this. Don't forget to fill it out. I'll put it in the chat. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to ask in the chat and we can get those over to Melissa. But without further ado, Melissa Saraceno, take it away.
Welcome, everyone. This is Unscripted, part one, Spontaneous Language in the Classroom. Like Grant said, it's a two-part workshop. Today, we're going to start discussing ways to motivate our students to use unrehearsed speech in the classroom. Before I dive into the presentation, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a mom of two active boys named Luca and Nico. They're 9 and 11. And when the weather is warm like it is today, I love to bike outside. And when it gets cold, because it does get cold in New Jersey, I like to ski. I've been teaching Spanish for the last 20 years. It'll be 21 years starting in September. And I'm passionate about the language, and I love to hear my students using the language. So you heard a little bit about myself. I know we did this during chat, but you can expand your answers if you like. I'd love to know where you work, what you teach, and a fun fact about yourself. I'm not sure, Grant, did you share the slideshow with everyone?
Yes, I can do that. I'll put it in the chat right now.
So I've created a Padlet that we can join. You can access it through the slideshow. I'll also share it through chat, and I'll explain the directions again on the Padlet. Okay. All right, thank you, Grant. All right, so again, once we're on the Padlet, let me share the Padlet with you guys as well. All right, hold on. All right.
I shared it in the chat, Melissa. You should.
Oh, you did? Perfect. You're quicker than I am. So once you're in the Padlet, if again, you can tell in the subject, if you can write your name and then share what you teach, where you work, and a fun fact about yourself. I just shared mine. For those of you that are new on Padlet, on the bottom right, there's a plus sign, it's green. And it turns into like a pencil. If you click on it, in the subject, write your name, and then, list what you teach, where you work, and a fun fact. And if you can add a photo that represents your answer, that would be great as well. The fourth icon, which is the orange one here, that's where you can add or search for an image, and then it'll add it. And then you can publish your answer. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that. Grant, is my screen on full screen at the moment?
You are currently, we can see your browser, the Padlet. I don't know if you can go full screen on the Padlet. There are plenty of people there responding, but
Let me refresh.
maybe the three dots on the right side you can push it full screen. Oh yeah, if you hit Melissa, if you hit those three dots, there's a little menu on the right side, and then towards the bottom it says go full screen.
Oh, gotcha. All right. Okay. Great. I'll give everyone like a minute or so.
All right, it's not letting me log in, so I'm just going to tell you. My name's Melanie Martinez. I work at EKU in Frankfurt High School. I teach Spanish, all levels, and dual credit in AP. So, and I also teach ELL.
Thank you for sharing. All right, so we're gonna do a get to know activity. I do similar activities in the classroom. So you're gonna choose someone whose answers you find interesting, and you're gonna ask them a question. And then that person will find another person and then ask them a question. So if you can unmute yourself and answer their question, if your name gets called on, that would be great. I'll start. Okay, so this question is for Jen, who also teaches in New Jersey. And it says you're trying to visit all 50 states and you've done 45. Which 5 are left to see?
This summer I'll be going to Missouri and Kansas, and then after that, Iowa, Kentucky, and Alaska.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Jen, if you can continue the conversation and ask somebody else, that would be great.
Okay, I just have to be able to see in the right part of my glasses. Excuse me.
Hi.
Yes, there was somebody here who saw a Kiss concert. Hold on, I'm gonna find them.
Guilty.
All right.
Guilty is charged.
All right, so how did you get that opportunity?
Okay, so my name is Martha. I don't know, I updated my Zoom and it put me back into the teacher mode with Senora Cox Stavros, but it's Martha. And I'm not really a big fan, but a friend of mine used to work in the music industry and got a hold of some free tickets and backstage VIP passes. So I used them. And then we got to eat with the road crew and everything with the buffet. And then Gene Simmons came out and was shooting baskets. And I was just standing with a group of friends that we came with. And he pointed at me and did this to gesture, come over here. And we shot baskets for a few minutes.
That's amazing.
It's one of my main things I use in Two Truths and a Lie. Gets them every time.
Oh, that's great.
Now I choose someone.
Please.
All right, wait, let me go back to the, how do I get this bigger? Oops. Ooh, wait, who did we just speak with? Jen, right?
Yes.
Jeannie, is it Jeannie that you went to your dream destination, Italy?
Yes, that is correct.
Tell us more, what parts?
So for my 40th birthday, I did get a chance to go to Italy. I always wanted to go to Italy after seeing the movie Eat, Pray, Love. We went to Siena, we went to Pisa, and I think Siena was probably my favorite one. I got to figure out how to retire in Italy.
Ooh, I do too. If you can finish this activity, that would be great with one more person.
I think I'll choose Kevin, going on that bucket list as well. I teach French and Spanish in Annapolis. I recently biked at, I took French in high school, but oh boy, I forgot. Alpe d'Huez, which have been on my bucket list. Was that fun?
Yes, it was a lot of fun. Can you all hear me?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, yeah. I am a big cyclist. The Tour de France just finished up, and my wife jokingly said, "You must be sad now that it's over." And so the Alpe d'Huez is one of those iconic climbs for the tour, and so it kind of combines my passion for French, which I've taught for over 30 years, and biking. So it was a lot of fun.
That's great. This is great. So we have people throughout the US that are here with us today, and they told us a little bit about themselves. And I'm going to show you how you can use an activity like this with your students. I just want to make sure, can you all see my screen? Yes? Okay. Okay, great. So let me just move on. I don't usually use Zoom. I use Google Meet. So this is, okay, here we go. So can you do a similar activity with your students? Absolutely. I love to use Padlet and Jamboard just to get to know my students, especially for weekend chats or before a vacation or after a vacation. So I am going to show you, before I show you the video. So this was a Padlet. that my students had created, I believe, after vacation. So I always ask 4 questions whenever we use a Padlet. The questions are ¿dónde, cuándo, con quién y por qué? That's ¿dónde, cuándo, con quién o por qué? Or where, when, with who, and why. Where, when, with who, and why. I think it gives them the opportunity to write a little more in detail, because if I just said, what did you do over the weekend? Sometimes they just give me a really short response. So I always ask those 4 questions whenever we do a weekend chat or talking about the break. So here are some of the responses, and I recorded students asking one another questions about their responses, similar to what we did with the Padlet just previously. So I'll play that for you.
Partly, ¿por cuántos días estás en Massachusetts?
Por uno día.
So she just asked Parley. Parley is the student that went to Massachusetts. For how long did he go? So I tried to ask a question that they didn't write about. So like, what do you want to know further about what they wrote? So that's the question that she had for Parley.
Andrés, ¿tú le gusta la agua en la playa?
Sí, la agua en la playa es muy caliente y es perfecto. Es muy bueno.
So he just asked him how the water in the Bahamas was, and then Andrew responded. And then we ended with one more.
Vale.
Lucita, ¿cuántos años tiene? Yo tengo 14 años.
I found that funny because I think he was asking, how old is your friend? Because she was talking about how she went to a friend's birthday, and she answered with how old she was. So, you know, they make mistakes. These are Spanish 2 students learning Spanish. But I love doing activities like this. It's a great way to get to know your students. And I try to do these often, especially with Padlet and Jamboard as well. I like to add visuals too. I think it's important. I have a lot of students that are visual learners, so I think it's helpful to have visuals as well when they make their posts. So another way, or another example that I use, Padlet is, let's see, opening up. Okay. Are you guys able to see that screen? Yeah, okay. So again, for this one, I wanted to know what they were doing for this summer. So this is right before we went on break. Again, I asked the question, where, when, with who, and why, donde, cuándo, con quién, y por qué. But this was a little different. Instead of writing in the first person, they wrote in the third person. So I had them pair up with a partner, and then they had to ask those questions to a partner and write their responses in the third person. So here, what you see here is them writing what their partner did. And then I did similar to what we did, you know, that we went and they asked each other questions, right? They asked each other questions about their summer vacation. So it's a great way for students to ask questions, learning how to ask questions and learning how to respond to questions. And nothing's rehearsed here. So it's a great way for them to use unrehearsed language. So what is spontaneous language? I got hooked on spontaneous language years ago at a Flenge workshop. That's like my state organization for languages. I had went to a workshop that this professor that I had was running, and he did improv during the workshop. I had never seen improv in the classroom before. At that point in my teaching career, I had my students write dialogues, memorize the dialogues, and present the dialogues. That's how I was teaching years ago. And when I went to this workshop about improv, I was like, oh my God, that's so neat. You know, getting students to think on their toes, thinking spontaneously. And I got hooked ever since. So what is the definition of spontaneous? Let's look it up. So if you go to the dictionary, spontaneous is coming or resulting from a natural impulse or tendency without effort or premeditation. It's natural and it's unconstrained, it's unplanned. And as teachers, we have to give our students the opportunity to use spontaneous language in the classroom, because this is the way that normal speech is. You know, when we have conversations, we're not reading off a script, right? It's just off the cuff. So we have to make sure that we're open to giving our students opportunity like these in the classroom. So one of the main reasons our students want to learn a new language is that they want to hold a real conversation outside of our classroom. I'm sure you've met people that have said, you know, I studied this language, but I can't speak it. So they feel like they're not successful. So we need to help our students develop strong, spontaneous speaking skills so that they have an easier time when they leave our classroom or out in the real world. Okay, I'm going to show you a video that lists like different reasons why spontaneous talk is so important. And I'm showing you this video because it really like resonated with me, and I really like the way that she talks about spontaneous talk in the world language classroom. Yeah, full screen. Hopefully you guys can. All right, here we go.
So spontaneous or unplanned speaking relies heavily on understanding, so on listening and processing the spoken language at some speed. And both unplanned and planned speaking are obviously really important, but there's the recognition that the opportunities for developing conversational competence are currently a little underexploited in the secondary languages classroom. There are four main reasons why spontaneous talk is really important. So firstly, students themselves equate the ability to speak in the target language with learning the language. So essentially, it is the subject to them and how they see themselves in relation to the subject. And secondly, students think that what they can produce in an unrehearsed situation is what they really know. Thirdly, spontaneous target language use, or the lack of it, has been highlighted in every Ofsted report since records began. And finally, but really crucially, theories of language learning really prioritise interaction as the primary site where language learning takes place.
And what resonated most with me in this video is when she said, students say what they can produce in an unrehearsed situation is what they really know. And that's important, right? Making sure that they are equipped to have these spontaneous conversations, because we want to make sure that they're confident when they leave our classrooms. So we need to encourage our students to speak creatively and use unscripted speech from the moment they step into the classroom, in pairs, groups, and with us. So they will be a little uncomfortable in the beginning, but with time, they'll become more confident and comfortable. As teachers, we also need to provide more opportunities for students to engage in unrehearsed conversations, because real life is not scripted and our class activities shouldn't be either. So I do improv often in class. I try to do it at least once a week, and I'll show you an example of how we use improv in class, and you guys are going to be interacting in the improv skit as well. So what happens often, especially in the beginning of the year when I have new students, is when I set up my students in an improv scenario and they're engaging in conversation, there's always a student that looks back at me and says, they'll be speaking in Spanish, and all of a sudden they'll turn to me during their improv and say, how do you say this? Like, ¿cómo se dice? And I have to say, I'm not here. No estoy aquí. I'm not here. You got to figure it out on your own. So there's always a little bit of a struggle. But it's important for them to know that struggle is real and it's okay. And they have to learn that there's other ways of saying what they have to say, circumlocution, right? So again, they are going to feel a little uncomfortable when in the very beginning, but we have to make them feel more comfortable by providing them the tools that they need. And we'll talk about what type of tools do we need to provide our students to feel more comfortable in these spontaneous improv situations. So again, how do we prepare our students to use spontaneous language in the classroom? I'm going to share 3 different ways to get our students prepared. So in today's part 1 session, these are all the tools that we can do to motivate and make our students comfortable with using the language. Tomorrow's session is going to be dedicated to more strategies and activities that you can start implementing right away in your classroom with your students. So number one is making sure that we give our students the proper tools to get started, providing essential vocabulary that they will need for a specific task or a specific improv situation. Sharing useful expressions and phrases that they can use each day in conversations with their peers. It's so important to give them those tools so that they feel confident using the target language. So what does that look like in my classroom? So on the left is a board that I have in the back of the room. So I provide a new phrase every first day of the week. So if the first day is Monday or Tuesday, whichever day it is, I always have a new phrase of the week. I try to make the phrase of the week apply to the unit that we're studying. It's posted in the front of my classroom at the beginning of the week, and students keep like a running list of phrases in their Spanish notebook. As we finish a phrase of the week, it goes to the back of the classroom and it stays there. And it's a great wall because students are always turning their head and looking, because they're useful phrases that they can use in conversation with their partners, in their groups, and with me in class discussions. So it's really helpful to students to have this like phrase wall, right? That they can depend on whenever they're in class or whenever they are in an improv scenario. Even sometimes when they're in that improv situation, sometimes they do look back as well to see, oh, that's how you say that. Oh, I remember that. This is an example. I just took a picture of one of my students' notebook of some of the phrases that we've been using. That I taught on a weekly basis. And I do encourage my students to write. I feel like there's something to be said about writing on paper, not always being on our Chromebook. So I always tell them, take out, los apuntes, that's the notes, and write down your phrase of the week. So I always encourage my students to use their phrases of the week in class, and I'm going to show you an example of how I do that. So one of the first units that I teach in Spanish 2 is a travel unit, and one of the phrases of the week that I think is great to incorporate in my travel unit is tengo miedo, which means I'm scared. So I pair up that phrase of the week, and I always show like a short clip between 30 minutes to, sorry, not 30 minutes, oh my goodness, 30 seconds to a minute. And then I tell the students to watch the video, and then we're going to be doing an improv skit as the video is playing, as to pretend that they're part of the video, and they have to use that phrase of the week as they're watching the video with a partner or partners. So I'm going to show you guys the video, and then I'm going to go step by step how I incorporate this video or other videos with the phrase of the week for spontaneous conversation. And then we are going to interact in a improv skit as well. So here's the video. It's a short video. I think it was only 30 seconds. It's all you need when you're doing improv. And I remember when I went to that workshop years ago on improv, they say, keep the skits short, get them comfortable. If it's short, they're not as uncomfortable. And they feel a little more confident. So it's all about being real, getting dramatic, and tossing the scripts. Like I said, when I first started teaching, I was all about, writing out the dialogues, memorizing the dialogues, and presenting. And then I realized that's really not the way that it should be done. So when I have a video that I want to show, and that I want them to create an improv conversation with, we watch the video together in class, just like I did with you guys. We watch it. Okay. Then I ask my students for feedback. I ask them, what kind of phrase of the week could you use, or what type of vocabulary could you use during this video set? If you were a passenger, if you were a passenger in the video, what phrase of the week do you think would be helpful to use in this scene, or what vocabulary would you be able to use if you were part of this scene in the plane? Then I pair students, and then we talk about that as a class. Then I pair students together and have them engage in a conversation as if they were passengers in the video while they watch the video. So I play the video for all the students, and they're paired up at their seats with their partner, and they're having a conversation as the video is playing. I encourage them to use the phrase of the week. In this case, it was tengo miedo, I'm scared. But I say, you know, there's other vocab that you can use as well. Be creative with your speech. So then what I do is, instead of bringing the two students that were practicing together in front of the class to present, I choose two random students from two different groups to come and present, because that's true improv. All right. They didn't practice. So now they're talking with a whole new person. They're not sure how that other person's going to begin their conversation. They're not sure what question they're going to ask or how they're going to answer. And that's true improv. And then they present in front of the class. So I do that various times. Usually I do like between 3 to 4 groups that present. And then we review how the phrase of the week was used and other vocabulary that was used in all the conversations. And it's a great way for them to use the language in an authentic way. So we are going to give it a try. Okay, great. So hopefully we had some great improv in our breakout sessions, and I'm going to look for volunteers. Anybody willing to have a conversation? I'll play the video, and you and whoever else volunteers to have a conversation with you will present a 30-second improv conversation. Do we have any volunteers? If you can just write in the chat. Or let's see, and I actually have Grant. If I can't find the chat box, but if you see anybody offering to volunteer.
For sure, yeah, I'll let you know.
I can volunteer.
We have some cameras on there, and not a lot of shy people here. I think we'll have some volunteers.
That would be great. So we can see how this would actually pan out in the classroom. If we can see, two people actually engaging in conversation while the video is playing, it's really helpful to see how this would pan out in the classroom. If not, Grant and I can actually have a conversation. Grant, would you be up for it if no one volunteers?
I think Melanie is volunteering herself and James is what it looks like.
Oh, great. So what I am going to do, I am going to play the video. And if you guys can unmute yourself and pretend that you're passengers on the plane, having a conversation as the plane is flying. You just lower the volume just a little bit. Go. You guys ready? Here we go.
Is there a James, or did you mean Jason, Melanie?
I think it was James. Maybe it is Jason.
Yeah, I was with you. Oh no, I'm so scared.
Oh, I'll start it again, and we'll start from the very beginning. Here we go.
I'm terrified. This is my first flight.
Just close your eyes. No pasa nada. Just keep your eyes closed. It's fine.
Okay, I have my eyes closed. I'm thinking of something positive.
Oh,
chocolate. Great. Gin. Are your eyes closed?
No. This is my second time it's happened to me, so no bueno, but it's okay.
Is this normal? Does this happen on every flight?
Not every flight, but sometimes. But they're still pretty. It's okay.
Oh, I should have taken a boat.
Yeah, it's no problem. No problem. You're gonna be fine. Just hold my hand. It's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so scared.
I'm being brave. Okay, we just gotta be brave. Just get through this.
I guess it is kind of like a roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Oh, you guys were great. 8+ for the both of you. That was great. That was great. This is a great activity to do in class. You can incorporate all sorts of videos. Again, this is a video that I showed during our travel unit. And the kids enjoy it. They love the screaming. They love, And then after, for example, if you guys had presented in my class, we would go over all the vocabulary that you guys used. And it's a great way for students to work on their interpretive skills and their presentation skills and their interpersonal skills. So it's a great activity to do anytime you can in the class. I always encourage them to use the phrase of the week, which is "I'm scared." You guys used a lot of great phrases during your dialogue, which was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, because I feel like you can see how it can really work in your classroom when two adults present it. Thank you so much. Okay, so we went over the first tool, right, providing vocabulary and essential phrases in the classroom to help our students become more confident with the target language. Another way that we can motivate our students and make them feel more comfortable about using the language is making sure that we're a good role model. So staying in the target language, which we all know at least 90% of the time, and being consistent and reinforcing the expectation that they have to stay in the target language, as do we. Now, how do I do that? For many years, I've had a Spanish-English sign in my classroom, and I always challenge myself to only flip it once or twice per class or never. It's in the front of the classroom. And when it gets lost in my classroom, I have like a nervous breakdown because it's like I'm so used to always having it, and I've had it for so many years. And it helps me stay in the target language. And then I have to flip it when I speak in English. It's just a habit that I have, but it's a really good habit because it really helps me stay in the language, and it helps my students stay in the target language. I also break down directions and new information into small steps. Visuals, gestures, facial expressions, and movement also help our students understand us better when they don't actually understand all the words we're saying. Okay. All right. And number 3 is providing a reward system, which is huge in my classroom, and it's been really beneficial over the years. Having a reward system that keeps my students motivated to stay in the target language. So it increases participation. I teach 8th graders in Spanish too, and they love rewards, even at that age. Students get excited to receive a reward, and it helps maintain a positive classroom environment. It encourages our students to be brave and take risks, and it helps students remember classroom rules and expectations. If they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, speaking in the target language, then they're excited to win this reward. So what type of reward system do I use in my classroom to help my students use the target language? I have a Euro system that I've had for many years, in which students receive Euros for participating in the target language, for using the Spanish language. The students design the Euros. I give them a template. They design the Euro, and then we choose winners. And then I print those out. And I pass them out. They receive Euros for using the target language in class discussions, in debates, in improv, and formal conversations. I have to remind myself to pass them out. Sometimes the students remind me, oh, you haven't passed out Euros in a while. So I have to stay on top of it as well, because it really helps my students stay in the target language. So I have a secret weapon that I incorporate with my Euros. I started doing this, I would say, about like 6 years ago, and it's been a game changer for me. So it's really hard, there's only one of us, and there's, I have up to 24 students sometimes. So I can monitor myself, staying in the target language all the time, right? Or when we're in class discussions, it's easy for them to stay in the target language, but it becomes more difficult when they're in pairs or groups, right? Making sure that they're always in the target language. So I came up with this, I guess like 6 years ago. Yeah. So what students do is that they monitor each other. So students monitor the target language use in their small groups. So my students are in groups of 4. That's how they're seated. So they have to make sure that everyone in their group is speaking in Spanish, right? Especially when they're engaging in those non-academic conversations, right? They are allowed to steal each other's Euros if they hear their group mates speaking in English. So at the beginning of class, it's a routine that we have. They have to take out their Euros. So they put their Euros on their desk. If they are caught speaking English, their group mate that caught them speaking in English will say "Dame tu euro," which means "give me your euro," which becomes, that's like a signature phrase in our class. You're always hearing that "Dame tu euro," because especially in the beginning of the year when they're speaking, they're getting used to speaking less in English, you know, I'm sorry, lessons. Yes, less in English. So now I'm not monitoring them, their peers are monitoring them, and they don't want to lose their euros, because at the end of the year, we have another reward for having the most euros. So it's been a game changer for me. Students are immersed in the language from the moment they walk into the classroom because they do not want to lose their euros. And again, I have all these spies. I have all my students. They're my secret weapon. They're monitoring the use of English in the classroom. It helps promote spontaneous interaction in the target language because they're engaging in conversation with their teammates because they don't want to lose their euros. So these are some of the phrases that we hear often in my class. Dame tu euro, give me your euro. Dámelo, give it to me. Dale tu euro, give him or her your euro, because it becomes such a part of our classroom culture, you know, making sure that we're speaking in the target language. And this has been, like I said, amazing, because even if I step out of the classroom for a second to talk to a teacher, or if I have a call, I can still hear them speaking in Spanish because they're monitoring each other. So this is, again, my secret weapon that has been really helpful the last few years. Now I'm going to show you a video. I had interviewed 2 of my students to ask them what they think about the Euro system and if it's effective and if they enjoy it. So here's a quick video.
The Euro system is in Spanish and have a good response. So the Euro system is if we talk in Spanish and have a good response to a question, then we get a euro. And at the end of the quarter, you get a prize for having the most euros.
Yeah, and so if you're at a table group of 4, so if someone speaks in English, you can say "Dame un euro" and take their euro, and then you can collect euros. And by the end of the quarter, you try to have as many euros as possible.
Do you think this helps with keeping students in the language while they're in the classroom?
Yeah, we think that it does because it's like really competitive and it helps like immerse yourself fully in the language, and I think that it just has really helped me personally this year.
And even if you don't really know like any words, you can push yourself and try to like complete a full sentence and at least have someone else understand.
And I love how she says, like, it pushes you, right? They have to, you know, sometimes they don't know a certain word and they have to struggle to come up with the word, circumlocution, right? So again, that's a really great way to get your students talking spontaneously in the language if you have this reward system in your classroom.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
About the euros. So how do they say the euros and how they're responsible to say the euros for the whole year? And they don't have.
Oh, great question. That's a great question. So they design euros every marking period. So I have a winner at the end of each marking period. So at the end of, so I'm going to talk about that in my slide right now. So what do my students receive for earning euros? So they get a participation grade based on how many euros they've earned in comparison to their peers. And I grade them twice per marking period. So I take, say the highest amount of euros you earned in a class was 24. That would be the highest grade. And then I work from there, but no one ever receives less than like a C for participating, even if they have no euros. Students with the most euros receive 100 on their lowest quiz grade. And there's a new euro winner in each class, each marking period. So we do change euros every marking period. So we have a new design and we start from fresh at the beginning of each marking period. Does that answer your question?
So what is a marking period?
Oh, so it's a, how many, I don't know how many days. So we have 4, it's like 4 quarters. The year's divided, we teach for 10 months and the year's divided into like 4 quarters. And that's when they receive the grades for that time period. And that's when I switched the euros, because I'd like to have a winner at the end of each marking period. It kind of motivates them to compete with each other and to speak more in Spanish. And at the end of the school year, I run an auction in which students can purchase items with their hard-earned euros. I purchase different like authentic items, and they create paddles that have symbols that represent Spain, and that's the paddle that they use during the auction like they try to outbid each other with the euros that they've earned throughout the whole year for different items. I pass, like we have like different things like chupa chus, which are like Spanish lollipops. I have like magnets and little snacks. I have like hacky sacks and buttons and all different sorts of things that they can purchase with the euros that they've earned throughout the year. And they get so excited for this. This is one of the activities that we do. We call it una subasta, an auction. And I do it at the very end of the school year in June. And they compile all the euros that they've earned throughout the year. And then they're able to purchase items at the auction. And that's what they do with the euros as another reward at the end of the year. So we're coming to the end of this session, and I have another Jamboard. And my question for you after today's presentation or after today's workshop, after listening to what you heard, how will you prepare your students to use spontaneous language in the classroom in the upcoming school year? Or maybe you already do something that encourages your students to use the language. If you can share with me on Jamboard, we'll take a few minutes to do that. I can share the Jamboard with you guys, or Grant might get it before me. Let me see. I'm sorry, I'm slow with this. Okay. Let's see. All right, or you might actually be on the slideshow and you can access the Jamboard, but if not, it's coming your way. And I just added it to chat. And again, the question is, after we're coming to the end of the presentation, how will you prepare your students to use spontaneous language in the classroom? Or maybe you already do something, you implement something in the classroom that motivates your students to use unrehearsed speech in the classroom. What is it that you do or want to do in the upcoming school year? For those of you that are new to Jamboard, you can add a sticky note on the left side here. It's the fourth icon down to the left. And if you click on it, you can write a response just like other people are writing. Again, it's the sticky note icon that's on the left. Well, there's some great answers here. So I want to share some of the answers that we're writing here. Improv activities. I like this idea, changing it up and have students selecting short clips that they find interesting to use for the improv, obviously with teacher approval. I love that. Mixing videos, pictures, or audio recordings to promote the spontaneous speaking should make the process more interesting. Definitely. Learning how to use, I don't know what just happened here. Oh, thank you. Definitely providing plenty of scaffolding of target words and phrases beforehand so that students can acquire the structures and words we want them to use. Definitely. And that's why I think it's so important to, when you do an improv, use this phrase of the week, and which other ones could you use, so providing them that scaffolding tool. Learning how to use Canva so I can create even more chat mats. Yes, I love Canva. Since I teach level 1, they really need scaffolds. Even in Spanish too, I feel like scaffolding is so important. I want to do phrases of the week and find a short video to go with it. I do that often, and it's a lot of fun. The kids really enjoy it. In the beginning with improv, for those of you that are just starting out, students are a little nervous, but they do get more comfortable with it as the year progresses. Even just speaking in the target language, they're always nervous. They're like, oh, I'm learning Spanish too. I'm not gonna be able to speak English. But once they're immersed and they see that it's a positive classroom environment and there's rewards, they get more comfortable with it. Give good contextual vocab and grammar to help, definitely. Ask a question or greeting at the door to enter the classroom. That sounds great. So these are some great ways that the participants in today's workshop are planning to use in the new school year. And thank you for sharing, everyone. I don't think I went through everyone's response. Sorry about that. Hold on. Let me just get, I think. All right. So, Grant, do we have time for questions, or do I go straight?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. We absolutely have time for questions. Yeah, and Melissa, you can take questions now. If you're all wrapped up, I'll put the link to the feedback form in the chat for people to respond to. But you can, of course,
it's also
take
in the
questions.
slideshow.
Yep.
Perfect. If anyone has any, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute, or I'm not on the chat right now. I'm not sure if anybody's asked a question.
I think just the one question.
Melanie, you go first.
Thank you.
The one question I had put in the chat was, do you do your directions in English or Spanish? I'm curious.
That's a great question. So I'll be honest, if I am presenting a new game or a new activity that they've never seen before, usually at the beginning of the year, there's a lot of new games and activities. I do explain in English because sometimes the instructions are so detailed and they're way beyond my Spanish, their Spanish 2 knowledge, that I feel like I have to do it in English. But once I've done the activity once, then if there's any questions, I always do everything in Spanish.
Gracias.
How do you make sure that the kids keep track or get a hold or keep their euros somewhere where they don't lose it? Because when I give things to my students and don't forget, you're gonna need that, now I'm like, no, I'm gonna collect it at the end of class so that you can have it in the next class. So how do you make sure that they don't lose what they have collected?
And I'll be honest, they've lost it. And I tell them at the beginning of the year, it's your responsibility. I'm like, if you lose it, I can't give you back the euros. So I give them different ways that they can save their euros. I say you can hole punch them and put them in your binder, because they all have binders. I tell them that they could put their euros in their supply pouch, which a lot of students do that. They can paper clip it with one of those larger paper clips. But they have to come up with their own system. But it's not to say that some of them have not lost them. They have. And then at the end of each marking period, I do tell them to store them in their locker, because I'm like, you're going to need them at the end of the year when we have our auction. So make sure you store them in a safe place, which is, I always say their locker is a safe place. But I do give them different ways that they can keep track of them. For the majority of students don't lose them, but there have been students that do lose them.
Can I tell you what I do with my students at the beginning of the year? I give them an envelope and then I use pesos. You know, that's what I use, pesos, and they have an envelope that they decorate per class, and I have the banker, and the banker is the one that gives the envelopes at the beginning of the class.
Oh,
And
I
it's the
love that.
one, and it's the one that pick up the envelopes. And then I have like a little banking statement notebook that at the end of the week they count how much money they have and they write it in there. So then I pick up, so on that little booklet they have the amount of money that they have, so they don't have to really save it. So I do it weekly. That's how I do it. I do it weekly, and then but they have this little checking account, bank account, where they deposited their money, and
I love that.
So that's how they keep how much money they have. So they don't have to worry about picking it. I mean, in the locker or something. Now I have had students that older students have stole their money, and I tell them you're responsible. You leave it, if you forget it and you leave it on the chair and you then give it to the banker, then top luck. But yeah, that's what I do.
I love that idea. And I love that you call it like una cuenta, like a checking account. I think I should start using that word. I love that. I think May is asking if I grade the activities. I think that's what you mean, the improv activities. I don't necessarily grade the improv activities. I want my students to become comfortable with using like this unrehearsed speech. So I don't necessarily grade them. It becomes like part of like our weekly routine. It's just a way for them to get comfortable with the language, but I don't necessarily grade them.